First off, this gathering here has been a long time coming. We've been dealing at the Fort Worth Nature Center, dealing with pigs since 1999. We'll get into that in a little bit, but we had in 2010, we had a South Lake based meeting that was trying to get some communal efforts together, and this is a byproduct of that. At that meeting, that's when I started really ragging on Jack that NCTCOG needed to be involved in this so that we had a cohesive effort trying to work with the pig problem across the north central Texas region. One thing I don't think's been really just flat out said about this gathering here, the objective of it. We don't have any hard solutions for you at this point. Nobody does. There's too many different avenues to go down, too many choices to make. There's too many differences in the communities for any single solution to work. So the objective here is for every community that's represented to acknowledge that pigs are a problem. If you don't have them right now, you will have them. And if you're going to have them, then you might as well start being concerned about it and be committed to working towards a solution throughout the region. So really what we're looking for today is buy-in from all the different communities. There's been communities in the past that have stuck their head in the sand about this whole issue. It'll go away. I think Mike Bodenchuk, with throwing out the numbers for the state, can tell you this problem's not going away. We have to do something, and we can't afford to really wait too much longer. So with that in mind, I've got kind of an odd presentation today. It's a little bit of a composite of several different presentations because I've done a lot of hog work around the state and around the country, actually, talking to different groups. Everything from going to international hog conferences. Yes, they do have such things, where you get 300 and 400 or 400 people together. Last one was in 2012 that Mike was the host of down in San Antonio, where you bring in the entire professional hog community together to share experiences and information. I've talked to just conservation groups in general. One of the more interesting pig talks I gave was at an ASPCA conference. Nothing like talking about killing pigs to a group of animal preservationists. So at least this is a friendly audience here. Bear with me a little bit as we go through a few things. We have a problem. Pigs, wild pigs throughout the state, throughout the country, really becoming throughout the world. If you don't want to deal with pigs, move to Antarctica. You'll probably be safe. Especially with global warming, it'll probably be a pleasant place to live someday. But the problem is solvable to a point. Mike pointed out that eradication is not a legitimate idea to aim at. But the idea of controlling populations is not rocket science. Very easily summed up with trap pigs, kill pigs, continue until you're done. It's important to realize that this is an ongoing process. You may be pig-free for a while, maybe a few weeks, maybe a few months, maybe a couple years. You may be pig-free now, and it's going to be a year or two down the road that pigs show up in your community. But you need to be prepared for this. Let's look at the idea of, is it worthwhile getting involved in pig control? So I took some things out of our work at the Nature Center that I used some assumptions. We started active control in 2003. We took 30 animals that year. 11 of them were boars, 19 of them were sows. So I started thinking, what if we hadn't removed those 30? What would we do? What would our population potentially look like? And of course, this is just projected stuff. And so I made some assumptions that I'm going to say all the females were about a year old. From our records, when we look at our pig population we've dealt with, lifespan gets to about 7 years. So let's say they all live the full life there, and without natural predators and things, and without hunting on the nature center, then that's not totally out of the question. That would mean that, give or take, a female would average about 13 litters in the course of her lifespan. And as Mike pointed out, only needed to replace herself once. In using some data from our work, we found that our litter sizes average just over 3 piglets per litter. In case you're interested, we actually open up our sows and look to see, and we find 6 to 8 fetuses, but usually only 3 or 4 are viable. And then we'll get to this in a second, but control, a lot of, I think Jim Cathy pointed out 60%. A lot of folks say you need to remove 70% just to maintain the population. So let's take a look at what those 30 that we removed in 2003 can do in 2013. Doggone good thing we took those 30 out. But if you did control, you're removing 70% a year. 10 years later, those 30, with that 70% removal annually, would be 33. Still not good. That's why Jim recommended at least 60% to see some kind of reduction. And so realizing that 7-year lifespan is pretty long, because the literature says most pigs live on average only 2 years. I took and did the same thing, but I just factored in only a 2-year lifespan, which means they're only going to produce probably about 3 litters. Considerably smaller number, but still a number you do not want to deal with in your community. That 70% reduction annually takes that, the 8 is what's left after you remove 70% of 30. We only have 9 in 10 years. So, is control worth it? Do you really want that many more pigs in your community? We've been doing this for 10 years, and we monitor our cost. We do our work in-house with Nature Center staff, and granted, we don't get paid much, so the numbers are pretty low. But it averages about $60 per pig removed. So, using that 2-year lifespan, there were 519 pigs removed in that process. And so over 10 years, it averages out about $3,100 per year. Most budgets could absorb that. Damage cost, and I just pulled this figure out just to use it for absolute comparison purposes, just that same $60, which I would say in general is way low for the damage an individual pig can cause. Those 15,386 pigs that we would have in year 10 would cause $923,160 in damage in that year alone. Those pigs, if you add up what we had every year over the course of those 10 years, comes up to almost 42,000 pigs over 10 years, or 42,000 pig years, resulting in $2.5 million in damages. Is it worth investing $3,000 a year to try to eliminate or reduce $2.5 million in damage? Now, anybody can do anything they want with numbers. We all know that. But those are legitimate numbers. There are potentialities to just try to prove a point. The Nature Center, how many people are familiar with the Fort Worth Nature Center? Handful, very good. You're my favorite people of the audience. We're a City of Fort Worth property, part of the Parks and Community Services Department. We total up to about a third of the parkland in the City of Fort Worth, 3,621 acres. And all those traditional city regulations apply. No hunting, no shooting, none of those kind of things. And one of my messages is I don't want you to think in the terms of what you can't do in terms of control. Our pig program, or pig concern, started in July 1999. I can tell you what day, it was July 12th. My former supervisor and I were over in a remote area of the nature center, and we stumbled across damage that looks much like that. And that's an old digital photo. That just tells you how much digital cameras have improved over the years. But you see how linear that damage was? And it was in a real sandy soil. It's about a foot deep at its deepest point, and it seemed to follow pocket gopher runs. And we at first thought we just had a really determined coyote or something digging it up, because we had no experience with pigs, no idea that pigs were going to be on the property or were on the property, until about 3 days later when we saw our first pigs. Actually, 2 days later, our first pig was reported by a visitor because he said he saw a bear. So we decide we have pigs. And so we quickly, in city time, went to work 3.5 years later. The January 2003 is when our control actually began. But during that 3.5 years, we worked our tails off. We had a lot of work to do because the first thing we had to do was really educate ourselves about pigs. That table that Jim Cathy supplied handouts for has more information on it here today than I think was easily available anywhere in 1999. So thank you, AgriLife, for producing that kind of material. Our self-education meant hundreds of hours spent on the internet, hundreds of hours spent in libraries trying to dig things out, on the phone talking to people, trying to learn, trying to figure out how we're going to do this. And how big a problem is it? Should we be concerned? Because I have a background in wildlife biology and graduated from college in the mid-'80s. And I can remember back when states were trading animals, trying to bring wild pigs into states as a hunting resource. So I had a little bit of a confusion in my own head. Is this a good thing or a bad thing? From the Nature Center standpoint, where we were trying to have only native animals there, it was obviously bad. So that helped me, my own philosophy, work itself out a little bit. But we decided to, as we learned the different outlooks, the views on pigs, and we learned about different impacts they have, we decided we needed to identify our stakeholders. So we went through and we thought this process out. We want to remove pigs. Who's going to care? First off, the city of Fort Worth, who we work for, they're obviously going to care. It's their property. But there's many departments in there. And so over the years, we worked with the PD. We worked with the city legal, risk management, of course, the Parks and Community Services Department, code compliance now is back public health back when with animal control back when we were dealing with them. Anybody who might have a say in this or a concern, we contacted. We tried to educate and got their opinions on. We went to the state agencies. We talked to folks from AgriLife. We called in Parks and Wildlife. We talked to biologists. We talked to game wardens. First off, the thing we realized was nobody wanted to lay claim to this being their problem. And it's real interesting when you read about the history of pigs in North America that not often when you have an animal problem can you lay blame on somebody. But this is all the Spanish explorers' problem. This is their fault, you know, De Soto. If we could take him out back with the woodshed now, it'd be worth it. But the state agencies really hands off. The game wardens had some recommendations for us that if you want to try to do control, then you better have a hunting license. Which is interesting to have a hunting license on property that doesn't allow hunting, but it was something we had to deal with. We talked to the federal agencies. Fish and Wildlife Service said, we got nothing to do with that. That's not us. We did talk to Wildlife Services, and one of our former local Wildlife Services person Jan Lovin came out, and Jan was quite helpful to us when asked, how many pigs do you think we had? And he says, I don't know, but you got a lot. And he offered to help, and we couldn't afford that particular assistance at that time. We talked to our local non-government organizations. We talked to Audubon. We talked to Sierra Club. We talked to the local herp societies, the reptiles and amphibian folks, the Texas River Runners. We talked to anybody that participates in outdoor activities or has some concern for the environment or conservation. They all said, we got your back. We want to help you, but we don't know what to tell you to do. We talked to our refuge visitors, because we had some problems over the 3.5 years from sighting to action. We had 3, I'll call them encounters. 2 of them could be legitimate attacks. The third was simply an encounter that scared the bejesus out of somebody. But we can't afford to have our visitors, our supporters come out and be afraid to come out to the nature center. So they were on board with us. We also talked to the animal welfare folks. Specifically, we engaged in conversations with the Humane Society of the United States and the People for the Ethical Treatment of Animals. One of the good things about being a nature center is that you have contacts in a lot of different groups. And so they were willing to talk to us and talk rationally about the need for lethal control on these animals. And my main message with them, and if you noticed in the video, there was a gentleman by the name of Dave Pauley that's from Humane Society of the United States. And while he would like to see non-lethal control used down the road, whether it be contraceptives or something along those lines, right now, all we got in our toolbox that works is lethal control. And they acknowledge that, accept it, and as long as you try to do it humanely as possible, then you're not going to have any problem with those folks. And so we've had them on board with us since the beginning. We also considered the issue of the media. I think we all probably watch local TV around here. You see the news, and every time a bobcat shows up in somebody's backyard, it's going to be news, because who knows what preschooler is going to be taken down by that bobcat, even though it never seems to happen. Coyotes, alligators, and pigs. And so we knew the media were going to be players in this, so we got them on board with us and made sure they were telling the story we wanted told instead of avoiding the media. I have a kind of a mantra in dealing with the media, which is give no details but keep no secrets. And just be transparent with them. One of the things that I did right off the bat, July '99, when we found this, probably the end of July or early August, I sent out an email to the National Wildlife Society, had a listserv, an email forum, and I said, hey, anybody out there, nationwide, actually international, anybody got any experience with urban feral hogs? You can't really get people to laugh at you in an email, but that was the tone of the responses I got. You got to be kidding me. Urban hogs never happen. That was in '99. 2005, a friend of mine, Jack Mayer, who was also in the video, he produced this map of all of the urban areas that he knew of that were dealing with hog issues. From being laughed at to a fairly nice selection in 6 years. That's pretty good, I guess. 2012, there isn't even room to put the labels up anymore. There's too doggone many dots on that map. Some of the interesting things, if you look way up here, Michigan. It used to be the idea, well, pigs will never be a problem that far north. They won't be able to handle the cold. Nah, not a problem. They're in Michigan, Wisconsin, Minnesota, the Dakotas. Nope, in fact, they're in half of Canada. One of the real interesting things of urban pigs is that there's reports of pigs taking up residence in abandoned buildings in Detroit. So there's a problem for you. But let's talk about the Nature Centers program. we had a lot of issues of contention. Because basically what we did is we figured out how we wanted to handle it, how we thought would best serve the nature center, the ecological impacts would be within the realm of acceptance for us, for our visitors to accept, and everything else. And we went into it with one overriding factor, that we did not want to negatively impact our normal nature center operations. So we wanted to be able to still take out grade school kids out on hikes during the days and all those kind of things. So as we developed this plan and we presented it to various groups, our stakeholders, we found that these things here were our issues of contention. Scott, I'm going to apologize if I dump water on the computer. Lethal versus non-lethal control. There were a lot of folks saying we need to go non-lethal. Euthanasia method, carcass disposition. I've heard people talk about that today. And then who the heck's going to do it? Who's the responsible party? So we're going to take these one by one. Lethal versus non-lethal. There were several non-lethal options thrown out. Exclusion. Nature Center is 3,621 acres, 5.5 square miles roughly. Has the West Fork of the Trinity River running through it. Really tough to throw up any fence around the whole property. It's very costly. And then there's the entire myth, at least in my mind, the myth of the pig-proof fence. You can find pig-resistant fences, but there's too many things that create holes in fences. Tree limbs falling. In our case, on our northern border, where if you happen to know where 10 Mile Bridge Road runs along the north side of the Nature Center, about once a month a car loses it on the corner and plows into the fence and creates a new hole. So exclusion was never going to work, even if we could afford it. Relocation, interesting concept. Back in 99, 2000 and such, when we were exploring these things, we inquired as to that, and I will admit, philosophically, we didn't like that idea because of why should we take what we perceive as a problem and introduce it somewhere else? And we explored it and said, well, and we're told you need a permit and you'll never get a permit. So that kind of took it off the plate for us. That idea is somewhat opened up again through some changes in state regulations where there are relocation possibilities if boars are neutered so they can be put on to hunting operations and things like that. And then of course contraceptives, which been addressed earlier, they're still in the development stage, so that wasn't going to help us back in 2000. The euthanasia method as an issue of contention was a big one. Basically we had two ideas there. Chemical euthanasia or gunshot. Surprisingly, the animal welfare community were not the ones promoting chemicals because, and we use this to our advantage, Humane Society of the United States produces an animal euthanasia manual, which says quite clearly, including has diagrams of how to do it, that a gunshot, properly placed gunshot to the head, is a humane way to euthanize an animal in the field. They don't want you doing it at the animal shelter or something that way. Chemicals cost more than bullets. There's a lot of things that go along with chemicals in terms of regulations and storage and all that kind of thing. The equipment behind it's a little harder to get a hold of and use and store. So economically, gunshots were a lot cheaper. I want you to take the word can't out of your vocabulary. We couldn't discharge firearms on the Nature Center. We can discharge firearms on the Nature Center. It's a process you have to go through. You have to prove that it's a viable way to do it, that it's safe, that it is containable. A couple of members of our staff had to undergo handgun training with the police department Interesting little side story. We had to go to target practice, and they started us out about 25 feet away from the target, doing the typical human silhouettes. And we said, well, most of our shots are going to be taken from about 18 to 36 inches. So this seems kind of impractical, so we ended up standing 2 feet away from the target and shooting at the trademark logo down in the lower corner of it, while all of the police officers stared inquisitively as to what we were doing. But we were doggone good at hitting that logo. Police then issued firearms to us, 357 Magnums, which just came out of their stockpile. They give us all the ammo we can use, including that for training and keeping our skills good. At the time, we purchased 2 rifles as well, 45-70 lever action Marlins. Lots of pack a lot of power, but don't go any distance. Worked real well for us, but we quit using them. The idea initially was when you approach a trap, you might find pigs on the outside that you'd be able to remove them, which we did. But we found that we also did more harm to our overall program by taking 1 or 2 and letting the other 4 get away. We basically have changed our entire philosophy on those kind of things over the years. Next issue of contention was carcass disposition. There's a lot of folks out there that haul pigs live to a processor, and that's fine. Wasn't going to work for us. A lot of our areas where we're trapping, you're not going to get into with a truck and trailer to haul them out with. Also, that was just going to add to the time it took to deal with each successful trapping situation. We had a lot of people that wanted us to donate the carcasses to the needy, but we didn't want to devote the time to field dressing and trying to get them off property to be processed for that. We also, the risk management department of the city of Fort Worth was concerned about the possibility that we would have a homeless person get a free pork dinner and end up with a bellyache and try to take advantage of the deep pockets of the city of Fort Worth. So we chose to leave them on site. And we have 10 disposition sites around the refuge where we put carcasses. The responsible party, we had a lot of people. Local police, where the idea of us trapping them and PD come in and put them down for us. Local animal control doing the same. The general public, everybody wants to help remove pigs. Out of the 106 phone calls we received after this program got started, 100 of them were offers of assistance. The outside contractor, whether it be public like Wildlife Services or private, many offers, but they were outside of our budget. So we went with in-house staff. But let's see if we've been successful. January of 03 to July of 09, we removed 227 pigs. Not a drop in the bucket compared to Wildlife Services' 24,000 a year. But these numbers are somewhat meaningless because we have no idea how many we had to begin with. July of 09 to July of 11, or June of 11, almost 2 years, we had no pigs observed. I won't say we were pig free, but we had none that came into our attention. June of 11, we had 9 pigs show up, 1 sounder. We removed them, and our goal now is within 30 days of discovering they're there. July of 11 through December of 12, no pigs observed. January of 13, we removed 25 pigs. It was actually 3 sounders. And since January, we've had no pigs observed. If you do look at that, I actually had never looked at it quite this way until recently, and I was putting this program together. From July of 09 to today, which is over 4 years, we only had really 2 months that we had pigs. I consider that fairly successful. We took 383 total shots without incident. We do track each and every shot. We've had no negative media situations, no public complaints, no negative impact on our operations. This is just something I realized last night. This is the map that was generated by the 2010 South Lake meeting, that much like we're doing over here. And if you notice, the Nature Center's right here, and the West Fork of the Trinity runs right down through here. You notice there's no pigs known below us. In the 2008 International Wild Pig Conference, which was in St. Louis, the theme of it was Bar the Gates. And actually, I think we barred the gates on the West Fork, because the pigs now, if you look at the map that's in your program, I think the pigs there are actually coming from east to west, moving upstream. We stopped them. By stopping them there, we stopped a lot of issues like wild pig collisions. Love that picture. Jacksboro Highway is right outside our front gate. Busy road. Not a lot of work's been done on vehicle collisions. Jack Mayer and Paul Johns out of Savannah River National Lab in South Carolina did the only study I know that's fairly complete. And they just studied on the Savannah River site from 1968 to 2006. They documented 179 pig vehicle collisions involving 212 pigs. 91% of those collisions were solitary animals. The rest had an average of just under 3 pigs involved. Collisions occur during every month. They occur during every day. And look at that peak in the middle of the work week. Most occur during drive time, going to work. Think about any of the roads that are on the news in the morning saying avoid these roads because of traffic, if we have pigs running around on them. During those 179 collisions, there were 3 injuries to humans. 1 was a fatality. Estimated cost of the damage, anywhere from $0 to $4,000. I think Jack did not convert over like $1968 to modern, because that still seems pretty low for an average of $1,173, which I think is basically a bumper nowadays. We touched briefly on confrontations. This is a couple of different news reports around the world. Same gentleman, Jack Mayer, did a worldwide review of wild pig attacks. He documented 412 attacks, 427 pigs involved in that, involving 665 humans. 70% of these attacks occurred between 2000 and 2012. Part of that's going to be because of internet availability of information. 24% of these occurred in Texas. 27% of all of these occurred in urban and suburban areas. Most of the time it did not involve hunters. The animals themselves, mainly individual boars, sometimes a sounder. Can you imagine getting attacked by a group of 20 pigs? Most of them were described as physically large, but anybody that's worked with pigs and you talk to the public, every pig is really large, especially when it's attacking you, I would imagine. Many of them were injured prior to the attack. So you may see a link in those urban-suburban attacks to being hit by a car and then attacking people. Victims, I'll go through this very quickly, 665 of them, most of them suffering injuries. Some of them were just treed or chased. There were almost 4 fatalities per year from 2003 to 2012. Typical victim, not what you really would expect. Adult male, 50 to 59 years old. How many are in that age group? We got to worry now. Out walking, bicycling, normal activities. There's a relationship between the size of the victim and where the injuries occur. Since most of them were adults, most of the injuries are down low in the legs and feet, but abdomen, thorax, everywhere else, lacerations, punctures, abrasions, broken bones, fatalities due to exsanguination, mostly from cutting the femoral artery, toxemia, septicemia, infections after the fact, a brain injury, heart attack. Increasing in these urban areas. That's showing from 1990 to 2012. Kind of a big picture there. There's records of these attacks occurring in occupied buildings where the pigs come in. Picture on the left is out of Asia. Picture on the right is out of Germany. The one on the right I know a little bit better. Pig actually crashed through a plate, actually an entire sounder of pigs crashed through a plate glass window, ran amok through an office area. Police had to get in there. They shot 2 of them in the building before they broke back out and proceeded to run amok through town. Water quality issues have been touched on quite a bit. We don't have enough data locally, but we know pigs increase sedimentation in our waters. They increase the bacterial load, and there's a variety of ecological impacts. Sedimentation increases due to rooting and wallowing behavior. Bacterial load, I think, was touched on pretty good. Fecal coliform counts. Long list of protozoan and parasites that you can get. Hog activity substantially increased waterborne bacteria, which often excluded state and federal surface water guidelines. That's out of Louisiana in a 2007 paper. This is actually part of Jim Cathy's work down at Plum Creek. Average daily potential of E. coli load from wild pigs along a Plum Creek watershed there in Hayes, Caldwell, Travis counties. You can see the potential for impacting that waterway is great, and the same could be true of all of our waterways in north central Texas. Increased turbidity, changes in the invertebrate fauna, which changes everything in the whole stream system, changes in the plant community, reduced water polishing or water cleansing. Diseases, all I wanted to do was just flash through all the potential diseases that pigs can carry. Influenza, Mike addressed a little bit about the flu issue. San Saba County had over half the pigs tested there, which is a small sample size, had H1N1 or tested positive for it. Is there a connection between pigs and West Nile virus? Pigs wallow. They create those water-holding pools that those mosquitoes can be breeding in. We can spend all of our time emptying out our bird baths, but if the pigs are creating puddles out there for mosquitoes to breed, then all of our other efforts are for naught. So what we're really looking for here, this is to cut to the chase. We want your community to participate in this. You're going to monitor wild pig activities. Communicate your findings to your neighboring communities. Communicate it to NCTCOG and let them be the clearinghouse for everything. Engage in active control is certainly a possibility, but that's a community's choice. And share your resources and expertise. If you get good at it, tell everybody else how you did it. Monitoring, you can go with game cameras and start logging in, keeping records of sightings and sign. Let's make these maps that we're trying to generate actually accurate. Track damage, vehicular collisions, any kinds of attacks or confrontations. And then if you're actually doing active control, let's see what you're getting. What's the, how many are you taking? What's the cost of that activity? What sex ratio of the pigs you're removing? There's a lot to learn. One of the things that the animal welfare community stressed to us about doing this kind of thing, using lethal control, was what they call maximizing the gift. If you're going to put an animal down, get information from it. Like Mike said, that Wildlife Services takes samples and collects data from many of the animals they take, we should do the same. Communication and sharing, all that monitoring information lets your downstream neighbor, let them know the pigs are coming. If you're up here working on it and you know you're not getting them all, let the guy downstream know. So he's expecting it and getting ready for it. Control information, what techniques are working. Let everybody know your successes and failures. Your active control can go in many different ways. You can do it in-house as we did at the Nature Center, but that's pretty nice because it's a nice small 5.5 square mile area. It's contained. We could do it in-house. Trying to look at the city of Dallas or something might be more difficult. You can hire a private contractor, which some communities are doing. You can go with a public contractor like Wildlife Services. But what have we learned? Each community is different, and each community will need a different set of protocols. Match your community. We have learned that wild pigs can be controlled, not eradicated, controlled. And control is an ongoing effort. Effective control requires commitment. This is not one of those things that you can do halfway. You cannot start your control too soon. Control starts before you have pigs. If you think they're coming, you can start with your monitoring. The no pigs left behind philosophy is what we have changed to that, has been said many times, pigs are very smart. They can become trap shy. Dead pigs don't learn how to avoid traps. So you try to capture the entire sounder at once. There's a lot of times where undersized traps are being used. If you look at the literature back there, they're going to recommend time and time and time again to use big traps to take the entire group at once. And remember that the public is supportive of these control efforts. The public does not want pigs in our communities. And so I think it's all up to us to start moving forward and trying to handle this. Thank you very much.